Setting up a meeting takes a second. And okay, we're live. So, hello everyone. Hi, Heather. I
Hi.
have I have Heather Garner with me today. She's a sex therapist in Maryland. And we're planning to talk about sex of kids, which is one of the specialties. Uh, we joked about that, so it's just something that Heather talks a lot. So she has we will just explore it together, and it's going to be a lot of fun because it's just it's a serious issue. I feel like it's affecting so many, if not most, couples
Yep.
and young parents. And I myself have young kids, so I went through that, and I see my friends just in the community, not even in your room, but just in the community. You feel so much that if people are struggling, they say, we don't have enough time for this. A mom usually doesn't have the energy or desire. And so they start drifting apart. And sometimes they come in 5 years later to therapy, and it's already like been so much. So what do you see, Heather, with this topic? What's the primary like scenario there that you see happening?
I think what you're seeing is on point. We see lots of people who come in who usually they're on baby number two, right? So they've
Mm-hmm.
already done one and they're on baby number two, or maybe their kids are all preschool age. And typically I find it's a male partner has said, this is a problem and I want to come
Mm-hmm.
into therapy. And the same things you talked about, the female partner often says, I, by the time I get done homeschooling, like we all have now, right? By the
Yeah.
time I feed someone, change diapers, go to work myself, play, read books, do all those things, the last thing I want to do is another thing. And sex is just another thing on the to do list.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like, ooh, I can't wait to do this thing. It's like, oh, another demand that another person is making on me.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Um,
don't, and it's so natural to feel resistance to it or feel like, no, 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 not gonna do that.
and people are tired.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned that, like people say, how am I going to have time or I'm so tired? We've done research on this. By the time your kids are in preschool, new moms are about 2,000 hours sleep deprived. You
Mm-hmm.
lose about an hour
Wow.
a night, right? Dads, it's not as much. They lose about 13 hours of sleep a night. So they're sleep deprived too. So both mom and dad tend to be sleep deprived. Moms just tend to be more sleep deprived
Mm-hmm.
than their male counterparts. So you get done with the end of your day, all your kids are in bed, you've maybe folded that last load of laundry, and your choices are to go have sex or maybe just sit down and chill on the sofa and
Yeah.
just relax. Most people are going to choose the sit down and relax. I'm sorry, I have a four-legged assistant who decided he doesn't want to be part of our conversation.
Oh, he doesn't. Oh. So and yeah, the sleep deprivation is a good point because it affects the whole system, right? The
Correct.
nervous system. And so when you like, I remember experience when I experienced severe deprivation, my nervous system was activated, but I couldn't sleep. So you get to the point where
Yep,
you anticipate the wakings and you kind of activate it. So your kind of sympathetic system was activated, but you just can't relax. And
exactly.
to go into arousal state, to go into like sexual desire state, you actually need relaxation, and so you need
Correct.
a very well functioning nervous system that is nice and relaxed. And with sleep deprivation, you're just not going to get that. So that's like seems like a real physical issue before
And
getting to
it's
psychological. Yeah.
and it's the quality of sleep that new
Well,
parents get.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even, I mean, there's that saying of new mommy ears, like a new mom can hear a baby sigh in the next room. So
Mm-hmm.
even though, your baby might be sleeping 3 or 4 hours at a stretch, you're not getting solid quality sleep,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
So even if it's happening, it's not good sleep, which then, we've done tons of research on that. That can affect your mood, that affects your nervous system, it affects your stress levels. And then all of us in COVID are dealing with stress, and most of us are
Mm-hmm.
working from home and have our kids home all the time, and we're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Right. So no wonder
So
no
we,
one's having sex right now.
yeah, yeah. It's just like our system, again, to move into this like relaxation stage, we need a lot of safety. I mean, for women, probably even more, just like this knowing that I can relax, I can pay attention to myself, I can calm down. And without outside stress, it's becomes so hard.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you made an important point, and we talk about this a lot in sex therapy. We can only have pleasure where we have safety.
Yeah.
And the
Mm-hmm.
safety is not always necessarily that someone's going to harm me. Safety can include that I have the right to say no, like I don't want to do this thing, and my
Mm-hmm.
partner's not going to throw a silent fit about it, sort of like huffing and puffing, or maybe they are having a bit of a fit about it. And that I can shut my brain off long enough to enjoy
Mm-hmm.
adult sexual activity. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, did I just hear something? Is one of the kids up? Did I
Yeah.
remember to turn off the dryer? Like all those
Right.
things. New moms have a really hard time shutting that off to be able to
Right.
enjoy.
And if you're so worried about getting your sleep, then you start thinking like, okay, how long does this gonna take? Is it gonna take an hour? Is it gonna take 2 hours? When am I gonna get to bed? And so that's like it's kind of like cycles, and then really no space, like no container for the intimacy and connection and sex. That
And lots of women that I see, again, it's not all of them. So we're painting with a big paintbrush here. A lot
mm-hmm,
of women talk about that, like, okay, I'm getting bugged by my partner to have sex. This will probably take 15 minutes. I'm just going to do the 15 minutes and get it over with.
mm-hmm,
So
yeah,
then it's off my to-do list for another week, 2 weeks,
yeah.
whatever time.
And it becomes very transactional. It's not pleasurable for her,
Mhm.
right? And so it's actually a long-term effect that she becomes even less interested in sex, because the kind of sex you can have in 15 minutes for a woman, I mean, like including foreplay and all that, like
Mhm.
that's just not satisfying, right? Most
Okay.
people, women need more time to even reach arousal, and to reach orgasm. That's another, so the whole it's a lot of time.
I mean,
um,
I talk about this a lot with anyone I see for sexual health reasons, but I find it really interesting when I ask new moms this. I say, "Is the sex that you're having worth wanting?"
mhm. Yeah, that's a great question.
And
Hmm.
often the answer to that question is no.
Right. Hmm.
It's just, I'm trying to do this. And then if we talk about there being pain with intercourse, which is so common after
Right.
childbirth, I
Yes.
think it's something like at 3 months, 64-ish% of women are having pain with intercourse. So if you're
Wow.
tired, your nervous system is all out of whack, you can't relax, and it doesn't feel good, why would you want to do it?
Makes so much sense that you don't, right? And like, and also, yeah, what I was thinking too, like the pain can come with birth trauma, or well, any birth is traumatic to
Yes.
like a vagina, right? And that pelvic
Oh, yes.
region. And so like it's just, oh my God, yeah. Like how can it feel good? It needs some time to restore and come back to the
That's a big
yeah.
myth that we have in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that says at your 6 week postpartum checkup, you should be good to go.
Mm,
Right?
yeah.
That's our research doesn't actually bear that out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the standard that I guess our OBGYNs have said, yeah, everything is pretty much okay. But there's lots of women that continue to struggle with vaginal dryness
Mm,
after that. That can be
mm-hmm.
a byproduct of just giving birth, breastfeeding. There's lots of women who continue to struggle with pain after
Mm-hmm.
sex. The more traumatic your birth was, like the more severe the tearing that you had when you gave the
Mm-hmm.
birth, the more likely you're going to have pain at 3 months, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that have had the severe tearing, they're least likely to have attempted to have sex about 6 months
Yeah.
after giving birth because, again, why would you want to do that?
Right. And I wish doctors would talk about this because they give this number 6 weeks. And again, for a male, for some husbands, they're like, oh, okay, 6 weeks, let's go, let's do this.
Yep.
And the woman is like, no.
Yeah, the
And
doctor said
so,
you're ready to go.
yeah, the doctor gave us this enough. And so maybe if the doctor explained how individual it is and how many factors can play into this, it would be less, like a woman would feel less pressure that, oh, I should
Right.
need to feel ready by 6 weeks. And then she, there's a lot of then psychological
Well,
factors
the
to it.
reality is our doctors, including our OBGYNs, get very little sexual health education in med school. Like they get very, very, very little of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't think about things in the way that a sex therapist does, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you what my OBGYN said. So I go to
Mm-hmm.
my 6 week checkup. I had a big baby. He was 9'2", 23
Mm-hmm.
inches. He's a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, okay, everything looks fine. I'm sure your partner is going to want to have sex because I'm sure you haven't had sex in a while. So have a glass of wine or two and use some lube and just get it over with. It's not going to be
Wow.
uncomfortable. That was what my
Wow.
doctor told me.
A male or female?
Female. A female doctor told
Wow.
told me this and I was
Wow.
like, "Okay." And that experience is not just isolated to me. I've seen lots of women who've had a very similar experience of
Wow.
let me write for medication for you. You just need to relax. Of course, it's not going to be enjoyable. You just sort of got to power through it. Like that is the message that
Wow.
we continue to give women. And there could be things legitimately that still need to be dealt with. There can be scar tissue in the vaginal
Mm-hmm.
area from childbirth that needs to be addressed. There can still be injuries to the birth canal. There's a lot that goes on. So that 6 week checkup of like, okay, we're there and now we should be able to do this. It's a complete and total fallacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's again because the doctor has the like authority, or we give doctors
Yeah.
authority, and women tend to blame themselves a lot. So
Yes.
that's where they start having like this feeling, oh, there's something wrong with me. I don't want it. I don't feel good. My body, like, and because we don't talk about this, that it's
Yep.
normal, it becomes like this shame, or like something wrong with my vagina. It doesn't look the same. It's
Yeah.
teared, and now like some tearing can stay, like some doesn't
Yes.
heal. So it just looks different, and so she might be like, oh my god, it's not as, I don't like it the way it looks. And so it's
Yes.
basically like this, like in addition to a baby, it's like it becomes.
And things move and shift when you're pregnant. What worked for you before you had a baby might not work for you the same way. You might
Mm-hmm.
have to rediscover, and actually I encourage women to rediscover what works for them, what's arousing to them. The way that you masturbated before you were pregnant might not work for you afterwards. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
rediscovering your body and hopefully with your partner rediscovering what works for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the tissue right inside, it's like I remember I went to like perineal massage
Uh-huh.
after, like yeah, my doctor gave me physical therapy for pelvic area, and it was so
Yep.
helpful because I
Yes.
explored it in a safe environment with a woman who like gently pressed the area, and we like it was damaged, so she did some massage, and there was some scar tissue
Yeah.
that needed to be massaged. It's very, I feel like everyone should get that. It's a
Everyone needs to go. Anyone who's listening, you've had a baby, go to physical therapy. Go
yeah,
to someone who specializes in
pelvic
pelvic
floor.
floor
Mm-hmm.
physical therapy.
Yes.
Like your body
So,
will thank you later. Just the act of carrying a baby changes so much. Your
mm-hmm.
ligaments get loose, right? That's how we're
Mm-hmm.
able to pass a baby through the birth canal. That's how the pelvic bone's able to separate. you start to walk differently because all the weight was in the front. You have to get those muscles back to where they were. The pelvic floor is
Yeah.
like a sling, and your bladder sits on top of that with a baby on top of it. So, and it doesn't bounce back, it's
No.
like a
It
rubber
just.
band that you've stretched. And so,
Mm-hmm.
working with a physical therapist
Mm-hmm.
who specializes in pelvic floor work is, I mean, in France, you get anyone who's had a baby gets 12 weeks of physical therapy,
Wow.
like just
Yeah.
off the board. They come to your house, like
Wow.
American medical
Wow.
system. So, like, it
Yeah.
is important. That is important, important, important to find someone that can help you. Anyone that's had a baby, even if you think that you're not having any difficulties, to
Yeah. Yeah.
strengthen
And
those
it's,
muscles.
yeah, strengthen the muscles, and there could be some nerve damage. So it could be some areas there that, so yeah, I definitely
And
recommend.
stronger pelvic floor muscles can help with better orgasms,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? So there's that payoff later as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so important. But yes,
Yeah.
the vagina changes after you've had children. And yes, some
Right.
women don't like the
And
look of it.
right, right. But yeah, that's the acceptance piece.
Right.
Have you seen that, like you said, body change? So the ways a woman used to reach orgasm might not work for her anymore.
Yeah,
Like the same spots might not be
correct.
like, and so she might be like, I'm not feeling anything, right? Her
Correct.
or. Mhm.
And not just the vaginal area, but also our breasts. So the
Right.
breasts go
Oh.
through a lot of changes when we're pregnant too.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you're breastfeeding, it is possible to ejaculate milk when you orgasm. And for some women, that is horrifying and embarrassing. And so they might not want their breasts touched. For some women, I know I had this issue. Anyone who touched my breast would leak, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what? I have no control over these things. It
Mhm.
might be the idea of, well, these belong to the baby now, right? They're doing
Mhm.
their biological function. So, like, ugh, I don't want anyone else touching them.
Yeah.
Sometimes male partners feel that way,
Right.
right? Of,
Right.
and so your
And
nipples
it
might
could
not,
be.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, it
what,
could be like over touch too. Like the baby's
yeah,
like constantly,
correct.
and you're just like, don't touch my breast.
Yes. And your nipples can be, if they were sensitive before, they might be super sensitive. They might not be sensitive at all at this point. So finding out all those things that used to work for you might not work. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's
Mm-hmm.
relearning your body. I want to come back to something you said, the touched out thing. That is a total thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
our skin being the largest organ, we have all these receptors and it feels good when we get touched. Except
Mm-hmm.
we all have a threshold of when that's enough touch. And if we
Mm-hmm.
go above it, it's annoying to us.
Yeah.
New parents, usually the primary caregiver, have little people touching them all day without
Mm-hmm.
permission. And
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, the kids are asleep and their partner wants to cuddle with them. It's like, oh, another person touching me. Like,
Yeah.
the idea, I hear this a lot, the idea of someone else touching me is so off-putting. I don't want another human being touching me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the real thing.
Oh, it's
That
totally a
touch
real
that.
thing.
Yeah. I'm curious about your experience. If ever seen where the scenario where the husband stops wanting to have sex
Sure.
because of this that split. It's more from psychodynamic, the Madonna split, and so
Yeah.
before that it was this a woman who's kind of and now she's a mom, and so mom was like this Mary yeah,
Yeah.
Mother Mary
Yep.
image, and so it's not something to have sex with. And
I had
have you?
a great male friend of mine who said, we were talking about this in preparation for a chapter in a book I'm writing.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and he said, yeah, it's really weird that I'm doing these things to someone's mom. And
mm-hmm,
then in the morning, I see that person over breakfast. Like, that's
mm,
someone's mom, and he's looking at me the next morning.
uh-huh,
Where I mean, if we just talk about the breasts for a second, in American culture, they're very sexualized and very eroticized. And
mm-hmm,
so the idea of she's using those things to feed our child,
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
that does not compute. It does not line
It's there's
up
like
with
this
it.
separation, the split, right?
Yes, the
That's
split
like
starts happening.
either this, and that's like a nurturing thing that maybe idealized, and maybe there's like this even religious component for some people, right? That's like sacred. That's not sexual, and sexual is this other thing that's like
And
dirty.
jealousy
Uh-huh.
with the non-birth parent can is common as well. So if
Mm-hmm.
mom is breastfeeding and they're exclusively breastfeeding, and so she's the
Mm-hmm.
one getting up in the middle of the night, that is a lot of alone time with mom and the baby. And
Mm-hmm.
often dads or the other partner can feel like they're intruding into that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
part of the breastfeeding process is oxytocin being produced, which creates bonding.
Mm-hmm.
Most women report feeling a very close connection with their infant when they're breastfeeding. You're
Mm-hmm.
gazing into your infant's eyes
Oh
usually, and
yeah,
doing
yeah.
something else. It's a very intimate, emotionally intimate act. And from an outside partner, it's like, well, they have this relationship. Why does she need me anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so they start to back away. And then we have the emotional disconnect,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which then
Right.
creates the sexual disconnect. And now we
Mm-hmm.
have, the death spiral of
Right.
we're not having sex anymore. The other thing is witnessing a birth can be traumatic, especially for male partners to
Mm-hmm.
see, lots of guys have jokingly said, whatever you do, do not look down when she's giving birth. Like, do not look down. You will never get that image out of your head, right? You've heard this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
It could,
have.
right. It could be traumatic to see that and be like, oh, or even during pregnancy, some men don't want to have sex when their female partners are
Yeah.
pregnant because
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit the baby in the head, which is not possible.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna hurt you, that it's too weird. Like there's someone else present while we're having sex. It's very weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes that can start even before the
Right.
baby is
Yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm. Especially when
Um,
the belly gets bigger.
oh yeah.
And yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen that too, where the male is actually starts losing the sexual
And so
desire.
the really challenging part for couples, since we know from the Gottmans, the first 3 years are really hard on having a, a relationship after you have a kid. Those first 3 years, marital satisfaction hits the toilet, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the tasks of parents is to remember to be Heather and Drew. That's my partner.
Mm-hmm.
Tina and Sam, not just mom and dad,
Yeah.
which can help with that Madonna horror split. Like
Mm-hmm.
being a mom is a facet of who she is, but she's still the person that likes to salsa dance. She's still the person that likes horror movies. She
Yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and so taking time to have a relationship with your partner that is not based on the children. I'm a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
proponent of couples doing a vacation, even if it's like a weekend without your kids.
Yeah.
Go
Definitely.
away, because we all know vacationing with your kids is not vacation. It's
No, it's not.
it's taking care of your kids in a different location.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like how my therapist, my couples therapist, puts it. She says like, how could she asks us, me and my husband, she like, well, how can you be a selfish couple this weekend or this week? We were
Yep,
like,
that's great.
oh, well, she gives us permission to be selfish and put ourselves first. And I also like this idea that remember that you were a couple first, and you're going to
Yes.
be a couple after your kids are gone. So that in hierarchy, that relationships comes first. And
Yes.
so it needs to be catered and paid attention to and nurtured first
Yes.
before parenting, which is complete like for some people it's like complete like what? Like at first because we child-centered culture, right? American
Yeah.
culture is child-centered, so child like gods and everything else comes second, even ourselves. So
Because
that's
what happens is, and I talk to my clients about this because I do couples work, is you go through this being mom and dad, always mom and dad, always mom and dad, always mom and dad. And then 18 years later, 20 years later, your kids have gone off to college or military or whatever they're doing. And you turn and there's this other person in your house and you're like, who are you and why are you in my house?
yeah, And a
right?
lot of couples separate after kids are gone. A
Or
lot of
they
couples.
or they start separate. Well, yeah, gray divorces. Ooh, gray divorces on the rise. Or they start separating, I would say around elementary school age because they've grown apart so much.
Yeah, and that's where they start noticing it because there's more space for the
Correct.
relationship, but the relationship was already not working for so long. It's hard to recover, and unfortunately, a lot of people start seeking help when one of them was already kind of checked out.
Yeah, I think the Gottmans tell us that most couples enter couples therapies, I think 6 years after there's been a problem.
6 years. Okay,
I
wow.
believe they say about 6 years, which is like there's so much distance and resentment and like patterns built up over 6 years, and that's like, help us. It's like, oh, okay. I got 6 years
Yeah,
of stuff that I got to work through.
yeah.
So finding ways to be who you were as people before you had children on a daily basis, not
Yeah.
just on the weekends, not once a year we go on vacation, but how can we connect? Because you got together with this person and decided to have kids with them because you like them, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
right? And just
Hopefully. Yeah.
hopefully, I mean, that's the goal. The goal was to have kids and send them off and be able to travel the world or whatever your dreams were, right?
Yeah.
Um, so finding ways every single day to connect. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
other fallacies in our culture is we get so focused on performance-based sex,
Mm-hmm.
meaning everyone has to have an orgasm, the male
Mm-hmm.
has to have an erection. If we
Mm-hmm.
start focusing on pleasure-based sexual interactions, that takes off the pressure of he must have an erection every single time,
Yeah.
and it takes off the pressure of everyone must have an orgasm. And if you
Right.
focus on pleasure, then that opens up a whole nother world of possibilities after you have kids. Take a shower together
Mm-hmm.
without the expectation of having sex. Let me put this
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
Take a shower together. Have a really nice dinner together, even if you have to order it in after the kids go to bed, right? Do things that are pleasure based, getting a
Yeah.
massage from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Most couples, Barry McCarthy talks about there's 5 gears of touch. They are affectionate touch, like, hey, I love you, you're a great, wonderful person. There's sensual touch, there's playful touch, there's erotic touch, and then there's
Mm.
sexual touch.
Mm-hmm.
Most couples rely on affectionate touch and sexual touch, right?
Mm.
So I'll give
Mm-hmm.
you a hug, I'll give you a peck on the cheek, and they miss out on erotic touch, playful touch, and
Mm-hmm.
sensual touch. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll hear this with women a lot. He gave me a hug in the kitchen, which means he's expecting to have sex later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because we
Mm-hmm.
only do those two things and we don't do the other ones, we expect that any touch means is a signal that we're going to have sex. So we
Mm-hmm.
encourage couples to playfully touch each other. When was the last time you had a tickle fight? When was the last time you played Twister or just like wrestled or had a pillow
Wrestling.
fight, right?
I love
Like,
wrestling. Yeah. In
right?
wrestling, you can also get some of the anger and like if you have some like resentment, like, oh,
Right? It could be fun.
fun.
Sensual touch. For some people, having your feet rubbed, right? That can be very sensual. Erotic touch is, everything pretty much up until intercourse. Like doing those other things in the middle, mostly what most of us would call foreplay, without the expectation of we have to have sex and we all have to have an orgasm,
Yeah.
will take
Mm-hmm.
off a lot of the pressure of, okay, now I have to stick my penis into your vagina and we're going to do this thing for 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
everyone has to
Yeah.
orgasm. And if we
So then
don't,
it's like transactional. Yeah. That's
right, then it becomes duty sex,
yeah. Yeah. I
right?
love it. I love the whole take out the orgasm, the result and come into your body, come into your pleasure and start adding like little rituals, even if it's like a text message or like something. So sex is not those 15 minutes. Sex is
No.
kind of what happens in between
Yep.
as well. And so this
Yes.
becomes like environment, the essential environment that helps to build up.
You
They're
know, I
also.
jokingly talk with couples and say, look, if you want to have sex on Saturday night, you need
Hmm.
to start on Sunday, especially if you
Yeah,
have kids,
I love
right?
it. Yeah.
So send the flirty text message. Um, Assuming your partner is open to being touched, pinch someone on the rear end while they're, putting the dishes away. Like,
Hmm.
be flirty again. You
Hmm.
said earlier the whole we don't have time. I know I'm gonna say this and I can hear all the like moans right now coming from Facebook when I say this, but like put sex on your calendar, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is like, but it's not spontaneous, Heather. It's not fun. I challenge this, okay? Think back to when you were dating. You had a
Uh-huh.
date on your calendar, right? Like Friday night is date night. So you knew there was a possibility on Friday night you could be having sex, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Whatever your situation was, you probably had to tell your roommates to go away or you need to get a hotel room. If you're into removing body hair, you shaved or you shaved your legs. You probably put on cute underwear or at least like you're not like worst pair of underwear, right? You looked nice, you smelled nice because you knew there was a possibility it could happen.
Hmm.
Right?
And that's where like anticipation. That's where it started,
Yes,
really. The
correct.
mhm.
And so the same thing can be true after you have kids and you're married. Put it on the calendar. That does not mean just like when you're dating, you absolutely must have sex, but that helps you get into the anticipation of this thing might happen, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can maybe say, okay, we need to get the kids to bed earlier, even if on Saturday night, all you do is talk about your sex life, like, hey, I really appreciate that we're able to, even if you say, hey, I really appreciate that we're setting this time aside. I really appreciate that we're
Mhm.
continuing to work on this. Give each
Mhm.
other a massage or watch a sexy movie together. Or, it doesn't have to be we're having intercourse. There's so much it
Yeah.
could be. But
Mhm.
if you don't make the time for it, it's definitely
Mhm.
not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't know if you read this book. I was listening actually to this book, Vagina, but Naomi Wolf.
Yes.
It's such a good book, and she like talks about that, like creating environment and all that, and she says that for a man it's really important to, because it is like man more, I guess, like for a woman like she needs more of that preparation and build up, and so she's slower to build up, and so she put it kind of on a guy to do that, which I thought was interesting, but I could anticipate like a lot of resistance to like, well, do I have to do all this work, and like, well, I work all day, and so I come in and have to do that as well. So how would, like, if you hear that and like you hear this from guys, I don't know if
Like,
you
do I
do
have
it.
to
Would you?
get her in the mood? Well,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Emily Nagoski, who wrote Come As You Are. I totally recommend it for
Oh, okay.
anybody.
That's my next book.
Read it. It's great. It's wonderful. There's even a workbook to go along with it. It's awesome. I think it's actually back
Perfect.
there on the shelf. But we need to be responsible for our own pleasure and our own
Mm-hmm.
orgasm, right? But
Yes.
think, think, think about the benefit it could have to your relationship to make your partner feel special.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of
Yeah.
like, oh, I have to do this thing. Well, that's kind of what relationships are about. It's giving and taking. I mean, some of my couples
Right.
that need more structure, I say, okay, when is going to be your erotic date night? I don't call it sex night. It's what's your erotic date night? Let's put it on the
Mm-hmm.
calendar every week, folks, every week. Great. I want you to alternate turns
Mm-hmm.
of even if it's, we're going to go out, probably not this time of year in Maryland, but if we're going to go outside and have a picnic with the baby monitor so we can hear if the baby's okay, like it's going to be partner A's responsibility this week to plan that and do that. And then maybe the next week, the other person will plan something else. But once you start creating a culture of appreciation and a culture
Mm-hmm.
of getting your partner in the mood, it should feed itself.
Yeah, it does. I think it does. I think it's, the sometimes the struggle is to move out of, like if a partner's already like resentful and they already like lost that emotional connection, so they start like they start fighting for like resources, and they're like,
Yes.
no, you do it, and then they get stuck. And
Yes.
because once it's moving and they start doing it for each other, then they want to do it because they feel appreciated, or they feel like
Yes.
it kind of comes natural. So it's kind of getting there, right? Getting out
Hmm.
of the resentment. So sometimes we need to do the repair work if there hasn't been like breaks in trust, or um, something happened along the way,
Hmm.
right? To get
Absolutely.
there, to get to the emotional connection where they want
Yeah.
to do it for each other.
And if we're talking about those couples that we've talked about, we've seen where it's several years down the road and they're still
Mm-hmm.
not having sex, part of that repair is looking at the overt or covert pressure that has been put on people to have sex, because the
Mm-hmm.
quickest way to guarantee you're not going to have sex is like to demand it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we must do this thing, and like, why are we not doing this thing, and don't you love me? And
Mm-hmm.
that is not going to get you where you want to be.
Right. Right.
I mean, look,
And
the reality is you're both suddenly responsible for this little creature,
yeah.
right? That doesn't
Yeah.
come with a handbook, and you have to keep them alive and eventually figure out how to raise them to be good people. And no one's sleeping, and no one's sleeping well, and like, men can also struggle with postpartum depression, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there might be
Definitely.
some mood stuff going on. You've totally restructured how you've run your life. I remember going into like get Dunkin' Donuts coffee that before would take 5 minutes, and now I gotta get this little person out of the car,
Oh
and now it's
yeah.
like 20 minutes. Like,
Right.
everything is in upheaval. And so remembering to be sort of gracious about that you're both learning how to do this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Mm-hmm.
it's total and complete chaos, especially if you add more.
Yeah.
um, and that making a demand, just like with your kids are demanding something of you, you're probably not going to do it for them,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
That's where like the uh deeper work, or the again in therapy, because it's like, well, you're not having sex, you don't love me, and it triggers my childhood with wounds, and now
Yeah.
I feel like you abandoned me. Or for the woman, it feels like you at work all day, you don't check on me, you don't help with the baby, you've abandoned me. And so I find like the first year triggers, most partners triggers a lot of childhood wounds that we
Yeah.
then have to.
And fair or not, I'm an RLT therapist, relational life therapy. We don't deal in fairness. We look at equity. But fair or not, what women in the first year tend to tie to relationship satisfaction is how much their partners are helping out.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, did she have to say, "Hey, can you put the bottles in the dishwasher?" Or did you just put the bottles in the dishwasher? Like, that is the beginning of what we call the unseen labor of women, right? So
Hmm.
trying to help out
It's
more so that
yeah.
resentment doesn't build, and having frequent
Hmm.
conversations with each other.
Right, right. And that's what Naomi says in her book. That's like putting bottles in dishwasher can become this part of erotic, foreplay, because it creates
Yes.
safety. It creates like
Yes.
feeling he cares. So it kind of helps, thinking if
Yes.
men want to have more sex, that's like, well, put the bottles in dishwasher. It kind of does help with her relaxation and feeling safe in this
Correct.
environment.
And it's one last thing that she's thinking of while you are trying to get her into a sexy mood.
Yeah,
Right. That's
yeah.
what we call breaks in sex therapy. People have to know what their accelerators are, the things that get you going and turn you on, but
Mm-hmm.
also the things that stop that process. And
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, oh gosh, we have all the bottles from today still sitting out on the counter and they need to go in the dishwasher, is definitely a break for most people.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So figuring out what those things are, like what gets us going and what stops the flow.
Right, right. That's like, yeah, that's really helpful. That's requires like self-awareness and noticing, right, what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about like what kind of things we can do in therapy, and I wanted to, with that, we're gonna touch on some things people can do in themselves while you're waiting to get into couple therapy, because we talk how like overwhelming demand has been. So sometimes
Yeah.
you can't even find someone who's available, and so you kind of, what can you do on your own, right, to kind of help with that break.
Yep.
We can explore
So
that.
so we're biased because we're therapists, but the
Yeah.
the number one answer is like talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, just acknowledge that having kids is really hard. It's
Hmm.
really hard, and there's no way, it's like, were you prepared to have kids? As much as I thought I could be, right? You don't ever
Yeah.
know what's on the other side,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, and it's also beautiful and rewarding and amazing also, but it's also really hard and exhausting. Um, so talking to your partner, like, it's
Yeah.
okay to say, "Hey, I really miss having adult sexy time with you," in a way that
Hmm.
doesn't make your partner feel stressed. Or to say,
Hmm.
someone comes back from their 6-week postpartum checkup. How did it go at the doctor's today? Right?
Hmm.
How's everything feeling? How are you feeling? I know most people say we could go back to having sex. How do you feel about going back to sex? Do you want to go back to
Hmm.
having sex? What type of
Hmm.
sex do you want to have? Putting that date night on your calendar, your erotic date night. That's something everyone can do tonight. They can sit down with their partner and say, "Hey, I heard this Facebook Live thing with this therapist, and let's do this thing," right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be sex, but we can start putting in our on our calendar, even if you just talk about your sex life in a positive
Hmm.
and affirming way, not a complaining way, that you spend time being the adults, not mom and dad or mom and mom or dad
Hmm.
and dad, right? And work on that connection, which is going to help.
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
If you're a female bodied person and you are having pain past the point that you think you should be, go to your doctor and talk to them
Hmm.
about that. We know that something like only 15% of women are telling their doctors that they're having problems. Go and talk to them. If you're not getting a positive, affirming response, if you get, have a glass of wine and like get it over with, find another doctor,
Yeah, I was gonna
right?
say, like, find someone who actually is on your side, right? Not on the side
Exactly.
that's like abusing your sexuality to please someone.
Right. And advocate for physical therapy. I know lots of
Hmm.
health insurance plans you don't need to talk to your doctor about. You can do that yourself. You can go see a pelvic
Hmm.
floor specialist, right?
Yeah.
I would encourage all female body people and their partners to read Come As You Are. That can be part of your erotic date night. Let's read this
Hmm.
book together. One person read a chapter out loud to the other person, or let's read it on our own and we'll talk about it on our erotic date night, or we'll listen to it on Audible on our erotic date night. Like, get to know what your brakes and accelerators are. Learn how to talk to your partner about your sex life again. And then for the people that have had kids, it's time to start relearning your body, which means spending
Hmm.
some time probably engaging in some solo sex. See what you
Hmm.
like, what don't you like. Um,
Hmm.
you can do that with your partner, like, do you still like to be rubbed on your back? How hard, how soft? Do you
Yeah,
like
they can. Hmm.
feet
That's
touched?
yeah. They can be a part of a erotic night. Like, okay, let's see. Let's just touch each other and see what it feels good.
Exactly.
I think that's also what's been helpful for me to get like interested in that and to realize that like the more pleasure I feel, the more the whole life brightens up, the more
Yep.
energy I have for my child. So it's like the cycle that's because the sexual energy is sort of the primal energy, and if we don't feel that, it's like it's kind of becomes this like bland experience, like our life becomes just kind of so
Yeah.
to mhm,
We all need to have eros energy, right? The energy
yeah.
of passion and love. It's hard right now, right? We have a pandemic, which is death energy, which is Thanos, right?
Yeah.
Um, but we're all getting pleasure somewhere. And if you're not feeling like you want to get that from your partner, just do a quick look at your life and see, where are you getting that from? Is it eating a piece of chocolate? Is it taking a bath, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is
Mm-hmm.
there ways that you can bring your partner into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. Yeah, you can, or if you're not. getting pleasure, look into why. Maybe you feel like you don't
Yep.
deserve it, or maybe you're playing a martyr role that you only give, but or maybe you put everybody else first and trying to please everyone, which is common for women. So
Yeah.
kind of owning that, like coming back to the right to feel pleasure and like, no, I deserve it, I want it, is like a huge, can be a huge first step to even get interested in that again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah, I find that and that's probably the psychological part with a woman, comes to therapy alone. That's probably the work I do with women who come and say like, well, I just don't want it and don't enjoy everything, and then we look into why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there were problems in your sex life before you had kids, they didn't magically go away. And so
Hmm.
this might be the catalyst to starting to discuss some of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe sex wasn't pleasurable before you had kids.
Hmm.
And this would be a good opportunity to start talking about what do you need to change so
Hmm.
it's enjoyable.
Yeah, because it is. I feel like in our culture, like, oh, women, they do it for someone. They do it for their partner. They don't do it for themselves
Yeah.
because they want it. And that's like the huge first step to actually do it because you want it, and say no when you don't.
Yes.
Because
I
when you
mean,
can't, yeah, because if you can't say no, you cannot say yes. Really.
correct. Yep. That's one
Yeah.
of the 6 sexual health principles is having consent.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to say no and that be respected. Um, this is such a much bigger conversation about women and sexuality in our culture. Like
Yeah.
it's like a whole day lecture.
Yeah.
But yes,
So.
women starting to empower themselves, that's why I said start being responsible for your own pleasure and your own orgasm, and starting to communicate with your partner about
Mm-hmm.
what you're looking for and what isn't working and a little to the left, a little to the, like
Mm-hmm.
work with
Mm-hmm.
your partner because
Yeah.
adult sensual time should really be a relaxing, enjoyable, like adult playtime, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So see where your child parts would activate. That's a therapist talk, but you know how our child parts can get into that and like makes us
Hey,
anxious.
there's companies now that you can buy a canvas and they'll send you the paint and you and your partner can make body art, shall we say. Like talk about
Wow.
playing during adult time, right? You can get paint on each other and roll around on a canvas.
Wow. I'll look that up. That sounds fun. That sounds fun. The kids need to be out too, for
Oh,
sure. Or sleep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
the other thing, parents, you all have a lock on your bedroom door. You need to use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's okay when your kids get older that they learn that they need to knock on a bedroom door, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a container.
Oh yeah.
Babysitters or grandparents can be helpful too.
Grandparents,
use
friends,
use yeah, resources, community resources.
absolutely. That's that safety piece. We got to have
Yeah.
the safety so we can get to the pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think we're giving some tips, and also the books, right? Like Come As You Are or Vagina. I find it very empowering that they exist.
Yeah, there are a lot out there. Like I said, Come As You Are, I think that's an essential read. There's a workbook
Mm-hmm.
to go with it. Also, Emily Nagoski on her website has a lot of handouts and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
um, on there just to I mean, we none of us really got good sexual education. We all got puberty
Mm-hmm.
education,
Yeah.
maybe we
Maybe
got.
from
And
our
so
friends.
right from our friends. Yeah. And so some of the, that book and other books just to like get the education that we didn't get before.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
a female body person in sex therapy school. I was like, whoa, I did not know about all these body parts, for example. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and that's what that did.
Yeah. And again, like in the vagina book, she talks about like 4 different types of orgasm. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't
Yeah.
know you can have clitoral, vaginal, uterine, and cervix or
Yep.
something like that. So there's a lot.
There's a
Like,
lot. There's a
yeah.
lot. If anyone ever sees the 3D model of the clitoris, it's not that little spot under the hood. It,
Oh yeah.
it has legs and,
Yeah.
it's a lot. So
Yeah.
just, doing your homework, again, we talked about this. There's a demand for mental health people. If you can get in with a sex therapist, that's great. But there's lots of resources out there.
Resources to start on your own. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll do have a website if somebody want to look up your work or what
Yeah.
you do. Yeah.
It's,
Maybe yeah, or you tell me and I'll share it in
yeah,
the
it's
links.
garneringchange.net.
Oh, okay. Love that. Garden and change.
Yep. Yeah, I'll send it to you and then you can post it up there. But
Yeah. So if you have any like resources on website or any
absolutely.
yeah, people can look it up.
Parting thought that I'm having is lube is your friend. Remember that.
Yeah.
Lube is your friend, and don't use the stuff that you get from Target. The only thing it's
Mm-hmm.
good for is craft projects. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do your homework. Use good lube like Uber Lube or Coco New, like one of
Mm-hmm.
those.
Coconut
Especially,
use coconut oil based.
it
Is it?
is.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
even have a
Mm-hmm. I
CBD
like
one
that.
out there. It's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yep. And Uber Lube is great too. But especially after you have kids, right? Because the body
Mm-hmm.
goes through so many changes.
Yeah.
Don't think of it as there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It will help with, lots of people I've worked with, once I say, hey, are you guys using lube? Have you tried using lube? They start using lube. A lot of problems tend to go away.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Just like that. Sometimes simple solutions
Simple
for
as easy, right?
yeah. Okay. Was very nice talking to you. Wow, we're almost like at 50 minutes. So much useful information. If yeah, if people have questions, they can post that I can even ask you.
Awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so
This
much,
was
Heather.
fun.
It is. I learned so much. I always learn so much by doing this. So thank you so much for participating.
You are very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Heather. All right. Bye. Bye, everyone.